Earlier today, Republican Donald Trump tapped Indiana Governor Pence to be his running mate. Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders has endorsed fellow candidate Hillary Clinton. Both major parties are gearing up for their national conventions, but a recent Pew Research Center report says Americans' overall satisfaction with their choices of candidates at this point is at a two-decade low. Is this the perfect time for a third party to step in? Well, let us ask the leaders of three of Minnesota's minor parties. Brandon Long heads up the Minnesota Greens. Chris Holbrook is here. He's the state political director for the Libertarian Party. And rounding out the group, the head of Minnesota's Independence Party, Phil Fuhrer. Chris, you would think, given these polls, that the climate feels pretty ripe for a third party candidate. But gosh, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a call at this point, or am I wrong?
You're right, and you're wrong. There is a call, there's a need. I think there has been an exposure problem. I think the establishment, there's an obstruction problem in conjunction with media, keeping alternative voices out of the discussion. So as Gary gets more exposure, you mentioned Eric, the CNN town hall recently.
Yeah. Gary Johnson, your candidate for president.
Yep, Gary. Right here.
Yeah, very good.
He got a bump in polling after that. His name is becoming more well-known. So as Hillary and Donald become our best friends, their own worst enemies, I think all third-party options are becoming more well-known.
Well, Phil, Independence Party has actually elected politicians in Minnesota. But is it, from your point of view, is it hard to motivate the middle as far as the voters are concerned?
You know, the middle can be hard to motivate, mostly because they're the folks that will get out and vote, but they've got other things to do in their lives. Soccer moms, soccer dads, PTA meetings to go to, work. You know, we're trying to represent the working middle class here in Minnesota and improve that. So it can be hard to motivate them, primarily because they've just got a full plate, and they don't have time in a lot of ways.
What is driving, from the Greens' point of view, what is driving the voter dissatisfaction?
You know, really it's a dissatisfaction with corporate candidates. So our party, the Green Party, is really the only party that rejects that money. We don't accept corporate or PAC money. So, you know, the left in the country is really on fire, and we've seen that with the Sanders campaign. Our presumptive nominee, Jill Stein, actually, she took the I Side With quiz. I don't know if you know that site.
No.
It compares you as a voter with candidates. It matches you with who you'd be most appropriate with. Jill Stein took this quiz, and she was a 99% match for Bernie Sanders. So actually, since Sanders has endorsed Hillary Clinton, I just read that the Jill Stein campaign has received $250,000 in donations, an explosion of interest. I know that we're feeling that in the Green Party of Minnesota as well. So the left is really on fire, and they're really rallying against the corporate establishment.
What do you think?
It's kind of interesting. I side with Gary Johnson. He also aligns with Bernie. We were talking about this before the show. Bernie is a sellout, absolute sellout. There are a lot of people who are anti-establishment, and Bernie was their voice. He, for a year, has been saying Hillary is the most corrupt, lying, crony Wall Street shill that's out there. Last week he says, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she's elected president. That's not sitting well with a lot of people. Bernie supporters are going to Greens, going to Libertarians. Our internal polling shows 18% of Bernie supporters are going to come our way. There was a poll out today, I believe, showing up to 50% of millennials will do the same.
Phil, your platform calls for government focused at the local level, right? And the Libertarian platform calls for government as low down to the people as it can get.
Possible.
Isn't there a fusion here?
Well, I oftentimes call the Independence Party of Minnesota a small L Libertarian Party. There is some overlap, and there's overlap with the Green Party as well on some issues. I think where the difference is we believe that there is a proper role for government. There is a role for government to play, but we want a fiscal restraint responsibility. We want good return on investment, and government has that role where the private sector either cannot or will not take up the call. The Libertarians, unfortunately, I think, take everything, pretty much everything, 2 steps or 3 steps or 4 steps too far. And I think if you legitimately follow their philosophy down, it really ends up into anarchy.
Oh, well, Chris, would you like to?
With all due respect, Phil, your party has one of the worst histories of being fiscally responsible of any party in Minnesota. Jesse Ventura came into office and took us from a $4 billion surplus to a $4 billion deficit. He started the light rail, an eternal government project. He did nothing that's fiscally responsible. Now, I agree, we all agree, socially, we're all liberal. But fiscally, we are the only party for small government. There is a role, but a very small role.
How about with the
not
Greens? Where are
anarchy.
you on this government's role?
Yeah, so I think, we have some agreements with the Libertarians, with the Independence Party in terms of civil liberties, ending some of these wars for oil, things like that. But I think where we are different is that, we'd like to see a smart government, a government that's, instead of bailing out crooks on Wall Street, that's bailing out the students. Jill Stein is the only candidate that's saying, look, we need to abolish all student debt. There's 43 million people that are being crushed by this debt. We need to alleviate that. So I think on single payer, that's something that we've been big advocates for. So that there's definitely a difference in how we see the role of government. I think, instead of having corporate welfare, we need to be uplifting our citizens. So.
Go ahead. Did you want to make a
No,
comment,
I was
Chris?
going to say another big government party compared to ours. We're the only party for small government. Free college, free health care.
Let Phil get in.
Let me say, I think it's not the party of small government, it's the party of virtually no government.
Why you say that? None of our candidates say that.
Should there be
That's not in our platform.
Should there be a USDA? Should there be an FEC? Should there be an FCC? Should there be an NEA?
There are a litany of organizations
should there be a DNR?
Should there be a Department of Education?
You guys
Should
are
there be a
sounding.
Fed?
You guys are sounding like Republicans and Democrats kind of fighting each other here. Is kind of what it is,
We share a commonality on several issues, and the social issues that we talked about, some of the social justice issues, and certainly on campaign finance reform and electoral reform. We share those issues
And I would
too.
definitely not sort of get into that dichotomy of big government, small government for the Greens. I would say smart government. So obviously we think that the government is overreaching if they're collecting all of this metadata on our phones.
So how do you? Okay, so we're rolling into the general election here, and how do you get your candidates out in front of people? Is it a matter of getting them in the national debates in terms of your presidential candidates? How do you do that?
Absolutely. And with respect, I believe we're the only party that has a chance of being the third party in a presidential debate. Gary Johnson is polling anywhere between 10 and 13% right now.
And you need 15.
You need 15% in 5 national polls to be included in a debate, and set up by the Presidential Debate Commission, made of, establishment Republicans and Democrats, so they don't make it easy on any of us.
And I would actually disagree with that just because of the fact that Bernie Sanders was polling so highly before he was out of the race, and that we align so much with his platform, that I think that there's been sort of a media blackout for the Greens that I haven't, the Libertarians experience it as well, but the Green Party has experienced it far more, and I think part of that reason is that we're the only non-corporate party.
And of course, the story that you have to remember about Jesse Ventura was public campaign financing, right, Phil? I mean, is that part of the platform?
It's part of our platform, yes. And I think on the Green Party side of things, I think Jill Stein could actually rise up a little bit. She's qualified for matching funds. That's going to be coming in. Donations are up because of the Bernie Sanders endorsement. On the Gary Johnson side, certainly getting much more press, but he's got, from what I understand, a relatively large debt, and he owes about $300,000 from 2012 when he did take matching funds that was improperly spent, and he's got to return it. He's got like a $1.7 million debt that he's got to figure out. However, we'll see how that plays out.
I don't know anything about that. I'm not on Gary Johnson's financial campaign team.
Are you guys for public financing of campaigns?
Well, it's a necessary evil. I mean, it's a tool that's there. So to play the game, there's a lot of things we have to do just to get in the game. For example, Bill Weld created a lot of controversy as our VP pick.
Former governor of
Former
Massachusetts.
governor of Massachusetts. So we have 2 governors. That's one of the things we're doing is nominating pragmatic solutions that people will actually give some respect and credibility to. But Bill Weld is not necessarily a libertarian on many issues. So that was a bitter pill a lot of us swallowed to try and advance the cause to get 5% popular vote so we can get matching funds and compete. In 2014, when your candidate and myself ran for governor in this state, the campaign funds from the state went to Mark Dayton, and they went to Jeff Johnson. People who need them, like the Libertarian Party and Independence Party, don't have access to them. So, yes and no.
By the way, we have about 20 seconds. Do all you have local candidates running in state races?
We do. So we have a State House candidate, Dennis Parsons, up in 5B. We have Gabe Barnett, who is 60A.
Okay.
We also have several soil and water candidates, Lena Buggs.
And you got like half a dozen.